Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for another episode of the Memories of Plymouth. This is a 5-year, we've been doing this almost for 5 years now, trying to collect stories, memories of folks from Plymouth and the surrounding areas. This is a Plymouth State, Plymouth State. Do I have two hats on today or not? He'll cut it.
Yeah.
This is a Plymouth Historical Initiative, one of many that we conduct throughout the year. It's an important one for us. Our goal is to collect and preserve the stories, the memories of people from Plymouth and the surrounding communities. And I'd like to introduce to you today our guests. We have two of them. It's a husband and wife duo. I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
This is Richard, Dick, and Susan Evans. Thank you, folks. What we'd like to do in the hour that we're going to be chatting with each other is identify yourself to the audience. Many people know you, but there may be one person in 1,000 that does not. So I'll be asking you questions as such. And then we'll ask you, do you have some stories about the following topical areas?
Okay.
Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, let's try it out and see what happens. Please state your full name.
Susan Marie Connors Evans.
Richard Charles Evans.
All right, and either any part of your name, a namesake, you're named after somebody?
No.
Okay.
My father's first name was Charles, and his middle name was Elmer. My father's father was his first name was Elmer, so it's been a tradition to name the son, the name of the father is as his middle name.
Very common, thank you.
Yeah.
And where were you born?
I was born in Woodsville, and I'm not sure what year that. It was a very small hospital, and my parents lived in White River, and the hospital closed. I'm not sure what year.
I was born at the old hospital up by Livermore Falls here in Plymouth.
Do you know if you were born on the Plymouth side or the Campden side?
Don't know.
As the story goes, they would place the beds, they would place the beds to where you wanted to be born, just so you know.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we have these things we can share with one another. Mom and Dad's name, maybe their occupation as well?
My father was John Robert Connors from Brighton, Mass., and he was a cattle dealer who met my mother on what is known now as the Perkins Farm that my great-grandfather owned, and that's where he met my mother. She was born there, like I say. Yeah, I went to Plymouth High School by train.
By train from Perkins area?
It was the Quincy. They had a stop at the Quincy. There used to be a Grange right there, and they would get on the train in Quincy. And also her cousin, Emily, her maiden name was Eastman, Emily Eastman. Now, I don't know, there might have been more children, but the two of them were about the same age, and they would go to high school.
Nice, thanks.
My father was Charles Evans, and he basically was a logger. He did a lot of work for clearing the power lines years ago, led those crews. My mother was Elizabeth Haley Evans, and she worked for the college for probably 30, 40 years.
What capacity?
She cleaned some of the dorms. She did some of the, back when they used to do the, wash the sheets and so forth like that.
Wow.
The laundry room, yeah.
You're taking us back.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. You have siblings, Sue?
I have siblings. My brother Bob is the oldest, and then my brother John a year later, and then me, and then my sister Sally.
Wow. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I had two sisters. Patricia Evans Gunn married John Gunn from this area, Plymouth, and Gail Evans, who never did marry.
All right. And children?
Our children.
You say it with...
Phew, it's over. Scott is 55, and he is, well, I'll let you tell what he does.
Okay, he's the director of the Center for Biostatistics and Informatics at Washington, George Washington University in Maryland. And oldest daughter, Stephanie, is Stephanie Wheeler, and she is the principal at Salisbury and what's the other town?
Webster.
Webster, yes, thank you. Yes, Webster Elementary Schools. And my youngest daughter, Stacy, is Stacy Evans, and she is a counselor for the school district in the city of Manchester.
Wow. That sounds like a interesting vocation.
It is.
Yeah.
The stories that she tells, it's because she works a lot with immigrant families and has to visit their homes and talk to the parents. And a lot of them, although they are immigrants, really didn't get good advice as to how to act or to do things in their homes. So she would go to their homes and they'd be sitting on the floor eating while the table and the chairs were not being used because they had never used tables and chairs.
Right.
So it's just all kinds of interesting things. She had one other story which I think is worth. She got a call from, she works in 2 different schools down there. She got a call to go to the other school because the 2 young kids had brought their goats to school and they wanted to know where to put the goats. So they evidently had the goats in the apartments up in Manchester. So
That goes beyond the dogs and the cats.
yes.
I'm trying to remember the years at Plymouth State, and you never knew who was going to walk in, and occasionally there was an odd animal coming in with our students.
Right.
My dog went with me a lot to Plymouth State when I was, and he'd sit in the back of the room and leave when I left.
And that was decades before now.
Oh, yes.
You're talking
Yes.
about.
Yeah, we're talking 1960 to 64.
When his office was at Russell House, the dog would walk to school with him and lay in front of the fireplace, and his office was right beside that. And when Dick got up to leave for lunch, he'd follow him home.
And that's neat. That's a good one.
And also for Stacy, with the job that she does, she usually has to take an interpreter with her. And there are many languages, and she would always take someone that speaks that language. And one time she said the man was very friendly with her, smiled at her a lot, and the woman was out working. And he asked the interpreter if Stacy would like to be his 3rd wife. And she smiled at him because he was so nice, not knowing what he was saying. But anyway,
I'm going to see if that's going to get edited out. That's a new one for me. I'm sorry. Wow. The numbers have to be increasing down there, the numbers of people coming in.
Yes.
So the role of a social worker per se is really demanding.
Introduce them to the grocery store, go to the doctors with them, go to the operating room with them.
Yeah. Her husband does a lot of that interpretation for her because he speaks 4 different languages.
And he's Algerian. And he very often goes to the operating room. And Stacy sometimes goes along if the lady is having another child. And very interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good word, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the more we learn, it's great. Let's see. Where do you live? You were born around here, Dick.
Yeah.
Susan, you're a little bit farther away, but where do you live today?
Well, we have 2 places. We have a place over on Newfound Lake, right behind Shackett's Market. We spend about 6 months there. Then we go to Cocoa Beach, Florida for the other 6 months. Didn't go last year because of the coronavirus being so rampant there. We actually stayed with my son in Maryland.
Wow.
Pretty isolated down there.
What's your favorite months here, and what's your favorite months there?
Well, we try to do 6 and 6.
6 and 6.
And I am a resident of Florida. And you get a break on taxes. And that, is just about the right time. I think your 6 months has to be you know, you can't go for 2 weeks and then go for 2 weeks more.
Oh.
So we come home because we have a summer cottage, and we get to see the kids, and the kids can enjoy the lake and so forth. And the other 8 months, we sit on our patio and watch the ocean.
That sounds delightful, just watching the ocean.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your education. If you went to school here or elsewhere, start off with elementary school, junior high as we called it, high school, and anything more.
Started off with kindergarten at, what's the name of the dorm?
Hold on.
Hall dorm in the basement. And then half year we went over to the Spear, and then went through grade school. And then, of course, 5th grade started in, what's the name of the building?
Memorial
Memorial.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then high school.
and high school. Do you have any background? When I read that about you spending half your kindergarten year at Hall, I said, why? Why?
Maybe they did, I'm not sure. When was Spear built?
And that's what I would say too.
But I'm not
Construction.
sure. I'm thinking it was older, but maybe they needed the room. I'm not sure.
All right, interesting.
No, because I went to kindergarten in Spear, and Mrs. Batchelor was my teacher, kindergarten teacher. So they may have been renovating it or something.
They might have. I was thinking that Spear was long, long ago, but I'm not sure what the reason was.
I just think of Hall Dorm and the number of renovations, not really renovations, uses over the decades, how that particular building has been used.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting one
Yes.
there too.
And I did the rest of my, most of my education here in Plymouth. I did spend my 6th grade year down in Seaside Heights, New Jersey. My folks decided to move to California after my 5th grade year. We stayed there 2 months, took a vote, and my mother lost 4-1, and we moved back this way. And to compensate for her not being able to stay there, we actually moved to Seaside Heights, New Jersey, where my father bought a restaurant. And then the next year we came up to visit, and we stayed.
And that's the end of the story on that
Yeah,
one.
exactly.
All right then. Let's see. Oh, where did you go for your undergraduate degree?
I was a graduate of Plymouth State.
Plymouth State. Plymouth
Yeah.
State. Can you tell us the years so we could settle in?
I started in 1960 and graduated in 1964, and that was the first year that it took on the name Plymouth State College. And one of our graduates was the first, most of the degrees given up until that time were Bachelor of Education degrees. And Robert Homestead was the first person to get a Bachelor of Science degree from Plymouth State.
And I believe where you got your degree was at, what's the name of the building? It wasn't finished yet, and you had pictures taking.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, Silver? You mean where he graduated from? The building?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was Silver Hall.
We were Silver Hall at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Silver Hall
I'm not
was
sure.
built during my high school years.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Maybe that was a different thing I was thinking of.
And then, continuing with the education thing, I went to Brown University and got my master's degree and graduated with Bob Hope, who got an honorary doctorate at that time. And he was not allowed to speak, which was a disappointment to all the crowd. We graduated all the graduate degrees and honorary doctorates in less than an hour, and we're out of there. Then I went to the University of Wisconsin and got my doctorate in mathematics education.
I don't mean to put you aside, but I want to talk about Bob Hope.
Yeah.
Just for a second. Do you think that was commonplace then, that they might have had a presenter or he was receiving a degree or...
It was commonplace at that time, and I think it was all about, making the ceremony short and to the point and out.
Well, I think we're there now too. We're trying to streamline those experiences because of the numbers that we have on campus.
Right.
Yeah.
And the attentiveness of us can only be for so long. An hour is still what they try to do.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
amazing. It's amazing. All right. I'd love to have you share with the audience some of the teachers' names that you can remember, not all of them, and if there's anyone that was special to you for any reason, because I think they'll resonate with the audience.
Okay. Well, Mrs. Batchelor. I also had in 3rd grade Mrs. Ahern, which I thought was the queen of the century. And then I had Ellen Tapley. And then in, let's see, Ken Mara, Mary Sanderson.
Yeah, there were Ellen Tapley, and if I look at my junior high teachers, Phil Tapley, Ken Mara, Mary Sanderson, and Phil was actually the math. Oh, there was another guy, Brad Ames. But 3 of those 4 went on to teach at the college. So the quality of education we got as being a Plymouth student was really well done.
Yeah, well said then.
Also, Martha Rand, I had her in early grades, and she continued on with the grade school for many years, and my kids had her.
You can remember their first names, and I think I was taught never to use their first names. You've done very well. You've done well to remember them.
Bob Fry was also one of those people. I did not have him because my 6th grade year I was down in New Jersey, but he was a 6th grade teacher at the elementary school there, or the middle school.
And continued on.
And then he went on to the college and taught biology.
I had him in 6th grade.
Interesting. Did you do any post-grad work anywhere?
No, I went to beautician school.
You did.
And come to find out I was allergic to dyes and perms, so I never did any of that kind of work. I actually did a few, my first year when we were married, I did a few in nursing homes, but still I couldn't, my hands just were raw.
You're taking me back to when I interviewed Anderson's Dot and Tom, and Tom became allergic to flour, and therefore that was the end of his day, and I had not heard of that. I have heard of this, but have never met anybody that...
Yeah.
Wow.
So after doing a year of the school, it wasn't going to work out.
Wow. Wow. Well, let's talk business then a little bit.
Okay.
What have you done over the years? Your occupations, maybe some satisfying pieces, stories to connect to as well? Susan, you've done so many things.
Oh.
So fun to read the list, really.
Let's see, I babysat when my kids were, they were all in school. So this happened when we came back to Plymouth, and all the children were children of teachers. So they all came at the same time, they all left at the same time. And I did it for quite a few years.
Some of those kids were John Wixon, Jamie Clark, Billy Clark.
Billy Clark, she taught at the high school.
At the high school as well.
And Bradley
yeah, I forget.
Hall.
Paul, yes.
She actually was a student, and then she graduated, his mother.
I had her in class when she was bringing her child to Susan to take care of.
Yeah.
Convenient.
And I think one year she was in school with Scott. Scott was in high school, but he was taking some
calculus class.
Some classes at college, and yeah, it was so rewarding. And I had a stroller for 2. So if you were a very good child for the day, you got to be the leader in front of the carriage. Then I had 2 in the carriage, 2 holding onto the carriage, and 1 holding onto my shirt.
What was the most children you had at one time? Can you come up with that?
I think I had 5 pretty regular. Then I had 1 or 2 that were like every Tuesday and Thursday when Marilyn Wixon was teaching at the college. And that was only for half a day, whatever her classes were. And, you know, we had a room done over on Pleasant Street that was the kids' room, and, you know, the toy boxes. And we went out most every day. The only thing that really stopped us was rain. but during the snow we had a place to slide, and I'd have a block off on the road. And very often, because our when we parked the car, it was tarred, and the kids could ride tricycles and little stuff like that. And then I had them trained. They could go to the next door neighbor, who was Mandy and Tim, and they could go to as far as their driveway and wave and turn around and come back. And there was always a punishment because there was nothing between us and the road. There was always a punishment if they went on the road. Very, very seldom did they ever go on the road. And any car that went by fast usually was a student, a college student.
Oh.
And I would get out there with my flag and let them have it. And
they never did that again.
and it went very well, it went well. But we used to slide, and we would putting on 5 to 7 pairs of snow pants and boots and going out the back door, and you're in charge of the first sled and so forth.
Well, I just applaud you. For me, it's important to be outside as much as possible and to be active.
And I used to, by that time, I had probably gotten rid of most of my kids, like sleds and stuff like that, because they were in high school. And so I'd go to yard sales and pick up toys and sleds and little old bicycles and things like. They always had, they had a turn at riding what they wanted, and we always took turns. And I was always the one to push them down, and I made the snowplow would plow like the hill would go down to the sidewalk, and then they would build it up big, so that's where they would stop. And they had to carry their sleds up, which for a little fellow was hard to do, because I had to stay there to do the pushing.
It's cute. It's really
And
cute.
I always went for a walk, and many times we would go quite a distance, and we would take a lunch with us. And occasionally we'd go downtown, and everyone got a donut and a drink, and we went to the park. And anyone out of line never got to be the leader for the day.
Boy, if I was in your group, I would do whatever you told me to do.
I do.
That's even better. That is even better. Oh my gosh. Gentlemen, are you listening to this out there?
It was a fun time. It was a fun, and what came out of their mouth was just, sometimes I had to tell their parents what came out of their mouth. And two of them, Jamie Clark and Kara Philbrick, who died very young. I believe she was going to college here. But anyway, they were always going to get married. They would tell me, yeah. And they were going to have a bunk bed. And Jamie was always going to be on top, and she could be on the bottom. And they delivered that story every day. I'm going to marry Kara, and she's going to be on top. And then one day, one thing Kara said that was so precious, she came in and she said, and I believe she went home to tell her parents, she was the only girl, all the others were boys.
Oh.
So she always wanted to be a boy, and one day she came in and she said, they all call me Doo-Doo. I think that name came from Jamie Clark, Doo-Doo. And she said, well, now I'm a boy today. I said, you are? She said, yes, I have raccoons on my rubber boots, and that's what the boys have. So now I'm going to be a boy.
Just to clarify for the audience, how old was Kara and Jamie at this time?
They were about 3.5.
Okay.
Okay. And when I got them, they all were still on bottles.
Wow. Wow.
Yep.
I think the work that you had to do there, make sure that they're active all the time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have to do as I say. Let's go now.
And 2 of them had birthdays very close. So and they were all right within 2 or 3 months, which was great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dick?
Oh, jobs? Well, when I was younger, I mowed lawns, I sold night collars. In fact, Leon Sherman, who was a selectman here in the town of Plymouth,
Right.
would always buy his night collars from me.
How much did you charge?
I think we charged like 5 cents a night collar. So he'd buy a dozen and give me 60 cents or 75 cents for the tip or something like that. And also did I worked for the Forest Service for a while. Did some painting.
O.A. Miller's.
Yeah, O.A. Miller's. I swept the floors there when I was in college. With her brother was one of those, and sometimes Susan came down and helped us. I did a lot of shoveling of driveways and walkways when I was in high school and college.
I'm trying to think. O.A. Miller's, Rochester Shoe Tree, Draper and Maynard, all the same building,
Yes.
morphing over time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just for
And
the
I
audience.
was familiar with O.A. Miller's because my grandfather was a night, I can't think
Watchman.
Watchman?
watchman,
Yeah.
but he kept the fires going out back, and I would go with him often when you had this little clicker you had to check into every floor, and
Wow.
I would do that. I also thought of some other things that I did. I was a babysitter for the people that owned the Pemmy Hotel, and I was like 11 or 12.
Wow.
And
early 50s?
Yep.
Early 50s. Brakey's, Brakey.
exactly, Stephen Brakey was the, and they had an older boy. It was so much difference between the oldest one, who was out of college and so forth, and they had another child, and so I was in and out of that building all the time, and my job was to go downstairs and get breakfast for him and myself, go up and get him out, get him dressed, get him outside. It was very interesting.
Let me tell the audience that we will have one of the brothers here. He is going to be interviewed. He now lives in Texas. He's flying in for us in September. I think it's September 1st, and he's going to be sharing life at the Pemmy Hotel, what we refer to as the Pemmy 3.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I found it
and
fascinating.
what was his name?
Robert.
Were there only two boys?
As far as I know, there were two boys.
Okay, I didn't see him very often. He must have been in college or some.
He left Plymouth when he was 18 years old. He graduated from high school. He went back and forth, vacillated 6 months in Florida and 6 months cared for the hotel here. But some of his stories, who stayed there, etc., what was the day-by-day grind?
Yes,
And he had to work when he was there.
yes.
So he was uprooted a lot. I think the other brother is older, living in Maine. But to have him come back and share
Oh,
with the
so there
audience,
is an older one.
I think so.
Two older ones, and then
Okay.
this Stephen that was like, well, I got him out of the crib, you know. Yeah.
So hoping we'll learn a little bit more about that part of their life when he visits. Yeah, I look forward to that.
And I at 12 or whatever, 11 or 12, I had him all over town. It was just we could go anywhere in the hotel, and I'd take him home with me, and I'd take him, you know, just on walks, and
You were busy.
yeah.
You were busy. Let's see what we have. Susan, did you also take care of some of the folks in state homes? Working?
I worked at a state-owned building, which is the building still there, up by the high school. And they had moved 2, 4, 6, well, they called them clients, out of it when they was closing the state house. But I was a one-to-one with a lady that was 75. And my job there was to get her up, get her dressed, shower her, and get her into the community. So also part of my job was to shop for the household. I did all the planning of the food for 6 clients, and shop with her. She would always go with me, and I would always have, you can imagine, 2 baskets, and she would push one basket in a wheelchair, and I would push the other, and then we would talk about the meals and what we're buying and how much it was. The thing was, she was one of 16 children, and the parents died, and there were 5 priests in her family, and they were all older than her. So what they did back when, she was not retarded, and they put her in the state school.
Would this be in Concord?
No, this was in Laconia.
In Laconia.
And it was a real sad story. So all those years from, she never finished 8th grade. From all those years she spent in the state school with a lot of retardation, and some terrible things happened at the state school in the early years. And finally, when she was 75 and they were closing it down, she came to this home in Plymouth that they opened. So my job was to get her out to go to lunch with. I went to the, it used to be the Legion, where they would have lunches, bingo, church, anything. We had a ladies group, and everyone was her age, and she knew them. A lot of the people went to private homes, and we would have, once a week, someone would either come to us or we would go to them. So pretty much I would drive the van, and they had locks for wheelchairs, and part of the job also was to drop them off what is now, I think, the police station.
Not where the town hall was.
No.
Is.
No,
Oh.
it's out past where, well, anyway.
Okay.
I would drop 5 others off, and then the day was ours to do what we wanted.
Oh, that's neat. That's neat. You are a busy person. Thank you for doing that. Wow. Dick?
What do you?
You forgot what the question was.
Oh, occupations. How long were you a teacher? Where were you teacher, chair?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Stay with me.
I graduated from Plymouth State in '64 and taught 3 years at Hillsborough Deering High School. I was basically the math department. I taught all 5 subjects: Algebra 1, 2, Geometry, Advanced Math, and Calculus. So when I hear teachers say, well, I've got 3 preparations, well, I say, well, you ought to have 5, and then you'll know what busy means. But anyways, and then went to Brown for my master's degree, and then came back and was the chair of the department over at Lebanon High School for 1 year, and then went off to University of Wisconsin and I must admit I was extremely fortunate to go to Brown and to go to the University of Wisconsin. I received National Science Foundation scholarships.
Wow.
And I made more money as a student than I was making as a teacher. Well, so that puts things into perspective in terms of the pay for teachers. And I came back in 1970 to Plymouth, and my paycheck that year was $8,500. And that year there was this movement to not finance the university system, and there were no raises given. And Harold Hyde tried to give us raises because he was very conservative and saved money over the years. And he said, I have enough to do our raises, but the university system would not allow him to do it, and not allow then to UNH and Keene and others to have done it as well. And I taught at Plymouth State for 36 years. I ended my tenure there in December of 2006. I then continued to do a lot of work, consultant work, with school districts, in particular Salem and Rochester, and did a lot of graduate courses with their teachers so that they could get master's degrees from there. We also were Ferd Prevost, who was the state math consultant for 30 some odd years, he and I wrote a grant when I was at Plymouth State to establish the New Hampshire Impact Center for Science and Mathematics. And also included in that grant was Warren Tomkowitz and Mark Tursky. They did the science part, we did the math part, and they kept us very busy in that particular grant. So, and another part of me was because I had received so many grants. I received over 50 different grants during my tenure at Plymouth State.
Astonishing, astonishing.
Yeah. The then president asked me to create a grant office, and I said, well, I will if I only deal with what's going ahead. I don't want to deal with once the grant's been awarded, all that kind of stuff. And so I established at that time what was called the pre-award grants office, and sent around flyers about grants that were available to different departments and so forth, and helped out other faculty who were writing grants as well.
Very worthwhile. Very
Yeah.
worthwhile.
It was a big plus, and I would like to say I could take credit for the NOAA, the National Oceanic something association, American Association. Anyway, so the big grant that the meteorology department has had now for many, many years, but in actuality, I did very little with that, and in fact, neither did our meteorology department. It was awarded to us before we even wrote the grant.
Wow.
Because we were helping the aerospace industry or whatever was going on down at UNH. And they needed a group of people that were working with weather to work with. And so we got that grant, and that's been a big plus to the college and the meteorology
Well,
department.
it was the right people at the right time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. I'd like to switch a little bit if we can. With the time that we have left, I'd like to talk about Plymouth. All right, Plymouth and the surrounding areas, if we can. So I'm going to throw things out at you, and you're going to respond. You can
Okay.
pass if you want to.
Okay.
Are you ready again?
Well, I'm
Sure.
ready.
Here we go. Thinking about yourself here when you were a child or a youth, what comes to your mind?
Well, I think that it was a great place to grow up in, and that's the reason why we came back here to live with our children. I think we did not have to deal with drugs and a lot of that kind of stuff in the schools at that time, although now I guess they do. But it was a great place to live. The education here I thought was very good, with the connection to the college and teachers in general. And so I think it was, the one regret I have is that we were somewhat sheltered from what was going on around the rest of the country. For a prime example of that would be the fact that in Tulsa in 1921, they wiped out that whole black section of Tulsa, Oklahoma. I never knew that until just recently. We were really not told about the facts about what was happening around us. We didn't really know that much about even the civil rights movements that were going on. So to some extent we were sheltered, but we were also held ignorant of what the problems were that a lot of people were suffering from.
I think that's true, and I can remember going when we were leaving and Scott was a baby. One of the things that Dick's father had said to us, because we were going to live out there, and he was going to, Stephanie was born at graduate school, and one of the last things he said, be careful, there are a lot of black people there. And that shows how ignorant we were. I think maybe when Scott was in high school, there was one black person. And, Dick said,
Unfortunately, the fact that we went to Wisconsin,
Was
we
an
were in a
eye-opener.
community village there with graduate students from all around the country. Black,
all around the world.
yes, right, not the country, but all around the world. So many black students, many Arab students,
They went to
Pakistani students, you name it, they were all there. And so our kids
went to
grew
school
up
with
and
a lot of.
were very unbiased in terms of what was going on around the rest of the country, unfortunately.
I think today we're much more diverse, thank goodness.
Yes, yes.
But even now, here in New Hampshire, I was reading that article about it just in the Concord Monitor. I think we're only like 94% of us are still white. in this state.
New
Yeah.
Hampshire.
Yeah.
We've
But
always had issues like that when we were trying to hire, I think, while we were at Plymouth State,
Yeah.
trying to bring
And
in
it also
diversity.
was a huge issue with grants that we were seeking from the federal government because we didn't have that. And I would try to make the thing that says, you know, a kid who's born in Boston, he's going to go to the Boston Museum of Science 6 or 8 times in his school year career. A kid up in Groveton is never going to go. So I tried to make that argument, but that just doesn't sell well with the federal government that we have that kind of situation.
So our children have very good friends that are black, and very often I see them correcting some of their friends that are introduced, that it just, you know, they haven't seen black people. And Scott, particularly being at a university, a couple of universities, or during his school year, as an undergrad, seeing a lot of black people. It's just an eye-opener for people my age and older. That
I think we know so little in some of the history of Plymouth. We'd have a segment of Irish people that lived here. And then I think when my family moved in, all of a sudden there was a lot of Arabs around, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are pockets.
Yeah.
But again, we're much more accepting. We're all one.
Yeah.
We're all one.
Yeah.
And it takes time for change. We're just
Yes.
starting to see it now,
Yes.
which is good, which is
Yes.
really good. If I said to you folks, let's see, do you have a favorite childhood memory? Somebody that it stayed with you all of these decades. What might it be? No matter how silly it might seem. I use that word intentionally.
Well, probably my favorite memory would be my junior and senior years in high school. I was a member of the basketball team, and we were undefeated during the regular season both of those years. The people that were on our team, we have stayed close together all these years. We go out and play golf still with each other. And so it was one of those times. And if you've been in a small town, you realize some years the athletics are not that strong, but then you get a class of them that are. And fortunately for me, I was in that class that we had a lot of good athletes.
I don't know if I should share this with you or not, but I think we have a picture in the Historical Society, and you're there. And someday you're going to come in there, and I'm going to ask you to identify everybody who's on that team. As we get collections from people, donations,
Yeah.
they are so, thank you very much. We thank them for it. But we want to know who those people are, when this took place, and if
Yeah.
it was a superstar team. Let's identify these people. But
Well-
it's nice to know they're still together.
Yeah, and we were very fortunate being undefeated. I don't remember whether it was the Rotary or some other group held banquets for us after the seasons were over. And the first year we had Bob Cousy come up and talk to us, and we got to shake his hand and all that kind of stuff. Second year we had Tommy Heinsohn up there. And I don't think they've done anything like that for the high school teams that have done well over the years. So that's another little plus that I will always remember that.
It has to be a thrill.
Yeah.
A thrill that you
It
touched
was.
his hand.
right. Also, I don't know if we're going to talk about it later. They had the Plymouth Youth Council when we were young, and Bernie Smith, his wife, Dot Smith, used to take us. We would play on Saturdays, boys and girls basketball, and we would go to different towns, and it was all someone would drive us, and you know, for what they did to the town, and I don't think there was ever any pay. I'm not sure,
I know there was no
but it was
pay.
called
They did it
the
out of their good hearts.
Plymouth Youth Council, and they did a lot for people of our age at the time, and you always look forward to that Saturday or whatever event was planned.
And then the youth council also had every week a dance on Saturday nights for the people in high school.
And what was that called?
It was called
Canteen.
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 And I tried to get that started when my kids got to be that age because it had gone by. I said, you know, it's a great opportunity for young people to meet other young people in a situation that's being monitored and so forth, and rather than allow them to just go out in their cars and go somewhere and not know what's going on.
Now, I think
It
all,
was a great thing, and it's too bad we don't still do something like that.
yeah,
Well, I just thank the people that put it together,
Oh,
the
yeah.
parents that were part of it.
Yeah.
And you're right, it was a safe haven for them after a
Yes.
football game in the afternoon.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
so I would agree with you totally. It was a nice thing. Whoever thought of it, we thank you for that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if we had, did we have supervisors for that? Was there a policeman? I mean, like all the high school, not all, but a lot of high school people.
Well, there was always a janitor on duty.
Okay, and that was,
And he helped clean up afterwards. But for the most part, one person that did a lot that way was Judy Eyre. She would bring the music. She was music aficionado. And
All the
Denny
records.
Beckley would be the one that would drive her to wherever she needed to go to get these records for us to play.
well,
and
she
so
had
forth.
most of them. I mean, she
But
always
she had to buy them.
Yes,
Wow.
but yeah, and after the dance Saturday night, you always went to Fausti's,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
which I worked at later on. Even in high school, I worked at Fausti's, but later on I did also.
Should I ask you what you enjoyed at Fausti's? Is there a favorite or not?
Not really. It's
No,
just getting
just-
together and continuing the talking and have a soda and maybe a hamburger or something.
And the guys that owned that, the Minicello men, Fausti, Dye, and then Tony owned a gas station, and later Tony was my neighbor. But as kids, they were always friendly. They'd come out and talk to you, and you know, it just was a great place to be.
Well, that's what we do. It's part of a community.
Yeah.
You get to know everybody. You
Yeah.
can walk the main street and you can can say hi, how you doing,
Yep.
Yeah.
type of thing.
And same as they go into the store.
You still remember a few of them from way back, yeah.
Yeah.
And they have the memories.
That's right.
That's what's important.
And I want you to know my father supported your store very much, buying beer.
Did he really?
More than he should have.
I will share that. I will share that. How about fairs? Did you get to the Plymouth Fair during your youth?
Always,
Always.
Always.
always. Yeah, that was a biggie.
It was a big
Yes.
one.
The Plymouth Youth Council always had a booth up there, and we would take turns going in for 2 or 3 hours to sell hamburgers and hot dogs and drinks and stuff like that. And then we'd go out and visit all the fair sights and sounds and so forth. And it was a great experience, I think, for us.
Yeah,
We were driving by the other night and Phil said, every time I'm here, I think of the fair. Co-op owns the property there now, but
Yeah.
whenever we drive by, it
what have
always
they
comes
done
up.
with that? I haven't been by.
I'm not sure. I still think it's open land for
Yeah.
them, but it's just that memory that's going to stay with us that
Well,
attended.
You can thank Ross Deachman for the fact that the co-op is in charge of that, because he, along with a bunch of us from the town, myself, Billy Driscoll, and some of these other people,
Saved
bought
the,
that land so that it would be developed into something that would be good for the town and not just be, something
we all
else.
put in money.
And
yeah.
so I know that we never did get our money back out of that, but
Are you listening?
But it saved it
think
from
it
being
was-
like
they were
a
going to
trailer
at one
park.
point in time actually make elderly housing out there.
Oh,
But I guess they didn't have enough takers to actually go forward with it, and so it ended up probably the co-op.
I think they were trying to put trailer parks in there at one time also. Yeah,
well, you think about the area surrounding Plymouth and what could have been and what happened
Yes.
because of the vision of some people,
yes.
which we applaud them for doing that.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And my grandmother always worked at the fair. She made pies. They had a place where they had food, and she was there every.
And my mother was too, with the
Yeah.
Women's Auxiliary.
Yeah,
I think it was a community event.
Oh,
Yes.
The planners,
definitely.
the people
Yes.
that were in charge
Yes.
were all from
Yeah.
the town.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a great agricultural event. A lot of 4-H stuff and all the cattle. My father would go up there just to see the different cattle and the horses and things like that.
And we'd always go like the day before they opened, so we could walk through to see the cattle and
Oh,
so forth.
that's neat. It's touted as the oldest agricultural fair in New Hampshire,
Yeah.
if that's correct.
Yep.
It's just a very sad day when we found out it wasn't going to continue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And there aren't many left, and you take advantage. Hopefully, people take advantage, bring their children or their grandchildren
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a lot of changes in town. We're old enough to have seen some of them. Is there anything that comes to mind on the main street, out at West Plymouth? What's here now that wasn't then? You miss anything? Are you excited something came?
Well, in some ways, I'm happy that 93 came through this area, but I also recognize that it made it very difficult for someone who is struggling to buy a piece of land and to put up a house because property values increased so much. And so it was sort of like a double-edged sword. Yes, it was good in some ways, bad in other ways.
Like the new bridge in Plymouth, that was a godsend. Trying to think of some other things. Now that they have done something with the railroad and the building
Senior
down,
center.
the senior center.
That's an important part.
Yeah.
That's what brought people together.
Yes.
Yeah, why Plymouth probably was built where it was. On the waterway, you had a railroad come through going
Yeah.
north. Yeah.
Yep.
No,
I
that's a
mean,
good one.
if you look probably back to the history, I think Indians, the Native Americans were here because of the river
Absolutely.
and high ground and so forth. I mean, Plymouth's built basically on a hill. You
And
go up and down all the time.
many years before we were old, the ski area was a big thing in Plymouth. And those people came by train.
Which ski area are we talking about?
Frontenac.
Frontenac.
I was just going to say, most people are going to say, oh yeah, Tenney. Before that was Frontenac.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I can remember when my brother and Dick were in college, we got this old toboggan, and you could still, not many people did it, but you could slide on that area. So we got a toboggan and we decided we were going to slide. And did we hit the only tree at the bottom of the place?
That's a memory she has never forgotten.
Oh my Lord.
Let's see, during our lifetime, are there any political events that you were astonished by, took you back a little bit, you still remember? I'll start off if you can't.
Well, no, I mean, you gotta look at the assassination of John F. Kennedy to start with.
Yeah.
That was a real tragic loss for our country as such.
Yeah.
And then in 1968, 5 years later, you lose Martin Luther King, and then you lose Robert F. Kennedy.
Yeah.
All people who were very active in the civil rights movement at that point in time. So those have become very important dates. And I was fortunate enough, I did a lot of traveling when I was teaching at Plymouth State. And I was in Moscow when Brezhnev died, and
They knew there.
I'm trying to think of the guy's name that became the new president or prime minister of that area, of that country. Anyways, the people there in Russia, or the Soviet Union at that time, were so happy to have him come to the forefront because he was much more liberal. He was not punitive like a lot of the communist leaders had been. And my only regret for that whole thing was we didn't do more to help them through the coming times after that.
Transition.
Gorbachev was the guy's name. That, I think, was a significant loss for us in terms of trying to really foster world peace. We could have done a lot to help them through those tough times. We did nothing. And now we have back Putin, who's right back to where we were with Brezhnev.
Was that the year that
It was a
Scott?
golden opportunity that we missed.
Was that the year that Scott went with you? I can't
No,
remember.
this was a different time.
Interesting. I'm going to ask you, it looks like you brought something to share with our audience today, and it's connected to another story that you had shared with me. Do you mind showing the plaque to the audience?
I don't know if you can
It's
see
not
that.
going to be clear, but you can read it if it might be easier for them. Or would you like me to hold it, or
Yeah,
you
if
can
you hold
read
it,
it?
I can try to read it.
Ooh, let's see.
It was the American Legion in 1993 did a thing in favor of the people who were named that the Legion Post is named after. It's called the Duran Haley Post. And in 1919, formed and named the Plymouth Post number 66, the Otto Duran Post number 66, honoring Otto Duran, who was the first serviceman from Plymouth, New Hampshire, to die during World War I. In 1946, the Duran Haley Post number 66 was renamed to include my uncle, Bodie or Richard Haley, honoring him as being the first serviceman from Plymouth, New Hampshire, to die during World War II. And there was a big, we had a big supper, or lunch there, and we went out to the cemetery and so forth.
And you were named after him.
Yeah, I was named after him. So, and I never did meet him because he died in it was either early 1942, and I wasn't born until September 1942.
Wow.
But that's how I got to be named Richard. It was after him, so I'm Richard Charles.
Here we go again,
Yes,
going back to
right.
the very beginning. We're almost done with our time, but if we had a group, and I always try to remember to ask this question, if we had a group of young people around us right now, is there some advice you might share with them because of your years of experience, wisdom? Is that the word? No, don't answer that one.
I'll say I hope you realize how lucky you are to have been born in this country, and in Plymouth in particular, if you were born in Plymouth, because a lot of people around the world are suffering, and they're not due to anything that they did or anything else. And so we are very, very fortunate and need to reach out to those people to help them become more whole than they currently are.
Yes, and even though they're different in many ways, different languages, different color, be kind. It's a little selfish to think that your race or what you do is the right thing. There's a lot of people that do good things, and you should choose to be friendly and try to find those things out.
Well, I thank you for both of what you have said. I wonder if it's part of our Yankee upbringing or not, but we have to remind ourselves.
And sometimes, like we didn't see that until late in life. We didn't have any black children in school, black teachers,
Actually,
and different languages.
I did have a black student teacher from Plymouth State when I think it was fourth grade, I think.
It was very rare,
Yeah.
and probably very rare at the college to have black students or black faculty.
I can remember one experience. I don't know if it was offered to you or not, Dick. You're a tad older, but again, I was had given the opportunity to go to Florida to student teach. And one of the things, we might have been the first or second group, but one of the reasons I said yes and took off,
Yeah.
it was a different world for me.
Yes.
I had an aunt down there, so there was a safe haven that I could visit during those months. But the group of women that I traveled with, we all said the same thing. It was a wonderful experience. It opened our eyes.
Yes.
It was nothing like we had here at the time. But your words, it is an incredible place, an incredible community for us.
Yeah.
Oh, I see the buzzer. It's on 0.
Okay.
So I'm going to take. So I'm going to say thank you to our audience for joining us again for the Memories of Plymouth. We are nearing the end of our 5th year. Next month we will have Sally Dole Harris visiting us. So please tune in. And I always say the same thing. Those pictures that you have, please download them, but print them off. And on the backs of those pictures, or even the back of the plaque, maybe that's the time that you put the little story in there so that when your family looks at it, or grandchildren, futures from now, they will remember who the people were, the event, why you took the picture, and that's it. That's the story that we're trying to get you people, our audience, to collect, be it about Plymouth or the surrounding areas. So what we do here in our 1 hour segment here, 1 hour segment, we're hoping that you will steal from us and do the same thing at your house, even with friends. Does it have to be just family? I said this once before. I miss the sound of my parents. I cannot remember what they, the voices were like, and I wish we had the ability then, decades and decades ago, to save it and record it and listen to it one more time. So until next month, thank you very much for joining us.